one would associate the anthropological study of consciousness almost instantly with shamanism.
Yes,
I would think anthropologists have gone through a whole cycle in terms of how they view shamanism, from thinking of it as a form of mental illness to looking at it as a form of healing and community service.
Yes, well, when I got interested in this and when we got involved with it back in the I guess, 1970, I was strongly affected by the first book of Carlos Castaneda, Yaqui Way of Knowledge, and then the Journey to Ixtlan. And anyway,
it made a huge impact back. I think it was published in 1968 by the University of California Press.
Yes, it was actually a variation of his doctoral, what became his doctoral dissertation. In any case, I met another anthropologist, a man named Joseph Long, who was at University of New Hampshire, and we started talking about this and decided that we would put together a panel in what was then the 1973 annual meetings of the American Anthropological Association. We called it the Rhine-Swanton panel, after J.B. Rhine and a man named Swanton, who had been a major anthropologist, at a level where the Smithsonian published a special commemorative bulletin about his influence on the field. And he had written a letter at the end of his career saying to anthropologists, there's this whole issue, this whole area of study of consciousness that we're not paying proper attention to. And when we consider things in terms of cultural anthropology, we are remiss in not addressing the issues that this raises. So in respect for both Swanton and Rhine, we held this panel.
I think it's fair to mention, parenthetically, that one of America's greatest anthropologists, Margaret Mead, was very active in the fight within the American Association for the Advancement of Science to offer official recognition to the Parapsychological Association.
Yes, I was just about to say. I interviewed Margaret Mead, got to know her a little bit. She had experienced, she had known as a young woman, as a child, she had known a woman who was quite gifted at non-local perception. It had made a big impact on her. And she stood up in, I think it was the 1964 meetings of the AAAFS, of the board, and said, you know, we cannot claim to be a science if we will not study this part of human functioning. And that she was a friend of Douglas Dean, who we both knew, and who was the person who got me interested in therapeutic intention research. Anyway, it's difficult now, looking back on it, to realize how strongly these positions were held. Castaneda's book literally tore anthropology apart, because the view of anthropology at that time was, as you point out, shamanism was seen essentially as a strategy, I guess you'd call it, exercised by certain individuals in tribal groups to become powers in the tribe, and that it was really about the manipulation of power within the social structure of the tribe, that there was no real reality to the consciousness they were talking about. And so the way that you studied in those days, if you were an anthropologist, the way you were taught to study indigenous peoples, for instance, was that you would camp out near a tribal area, and you would bring informants out, and you would interview them, and you would describe basically the exoteric world. And if the shamanic stuff, you would simply write that up as sort of belief structures. It had no objective reality.